Hey guys, welcome to Marmalade Mysteries. I'm Ariel.
I'm Georgia.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Olivia.
We are four best friends brought together by our interest of true crime and mystery.
Through the years we've lived together, we've constantly talked about and tried to solve cold cases and solve mysteries from around the world.
And we really like the sound of our own voices, so we decided to put it out in the podcast world so all of you can hear how funny we think we are.
Each week, you'll hear one murder,
one mystery,
and we'll also feature a missing person because we believe in the power of communities to find lost people.
So, pour yourself a hot cup of joe, cuddle in your blanket, and brace yourself. From Marmalade Mysteries.
Welcome back, guys. It's your girl, Ariel, here again with another episode of Marmalade Mysteries. Let's check in with the other folks. How you doing, guys?
Oh, hey. Had a stellar Christmas with the fam bam. How about you guys?
We did a socially distanced Christmas, just trying to not infect the world and our grandparents.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Yeah, no, Christmas was good. No snow. Unfortunately, there was no snow here in the tropical climate of Hong Kong.
Really? No snow in Hong Kong? Isn't that kind of unusual in December?
Sorry, did that surprise you?
I bought a coat. I don't know when I'll use it, but I bought it.
When you come back to visit your friends in Texas?
So, like, the weather is it's, like, chilly. It's, like, maybe 65 degrees now, Fahrenheit. But everybody's got this, like, really trendy coat on. You go into the train and they got, like, the puffer jackets. They got the trench coats. And obviously, it's not very cold. Like, a light sweater will do you good. But
Nice.
I just felt so untrendy. So I bought a coat.
You're going to fit right in on the train.
You look sleek and modern and lovely.
Yeah.
All right, enough of the chitty chat. I'm rolling. I'm a steamroller today. So who's up first?
We haven't really discussed it. Mine is a little. It will definitely dampen the mood.
Then maybe you should go first, and then mine isn't particularly lighthearted, but that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, guys. So I actually did a murder. It was a request from one of our listeners.
Ooh.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, Hannah, I know you're listening. She actually sent me this link and she was like, you should definitely do this because it's still ongoing. And so today I am going to do the Bowen Road dog poisoner.
Ooh.
Yeah. This is why I said it will dampen the mood because
they're killing dogs.
If you love animals and you cannot handle animal abuse, you should definitely not listen to this. Just skip ahead to Georgia. Okay, so here we go. Bowen Road is a road that travels from mid-levels in Hong Kong. So this is a Hong Kong story, you guys. So Bowen Road is a road that travels from mid-levels in Central to the Wong Nai Gap on Hong Kong Island. This road travels through several neighborhoods, including Wan Chai and Happy Valley. The reason why I talk about these neighborhoods is because these neighborhoods are primarily most of the residents are expats like myself. So a lot of them come from different countries around the world and they come to Hong Kong for work. Because of this, a lot of them adopt animals and they take them out to Bowen Road. So hiking and walking is very popular in Hong Kong. For some, it is their primary source of exercise, and due to the lack of space we have in our homes, many people take their dogs to Bowen Road for a stroll. The first few victims occurred in 1989 and continued to occur until October of 2009. I am going to now describe a few of the victims and their cases as well as the poisoner's MO. If you don't like graphic details or just don't want to hear about animal abuse, this is the time to skip forward. So, the killer has a reputation of using chicken, duck, or goose as his bait. He coats the meat in a very powerful insecticide. He hides the meat along the side of the road under grass or near structures such as a fence or rocks. In an article I found in the South China Morning Post. One woman, Sarah James, described her experience. Her father gifted her 2 rescue dogs, Max and Holly. Sarah was a student at the island school and lived in mid-levels. One morning, she took Max on a walk down Bowen Road. Shortly after, Sarah noticed her dog was vomiting violently and shaking. She was watching her dog die before her eyes, and she rushed him to the nearest vet on Mosque Street. The vet administered activated charcoal in hopes that the decontaminant would bind with the deadly poison in Max's gut to stop it from entering the bloodstream. Now, I'm not sure if Max survived because of the way the article was written. However, Sarah's second dog, Holly, was shortly poisoned after, within a few months.
Oh my god.
Like Max, she was vomiting violently and there was diarrhea everywhere. She said Holly was standing and shaking, and then all of a sudden she just stopped and dropped to the floor. She rushed Holly to the vet, and luckily Holly was able to recover. From the article, it sounded like Max did not recover because the only one that she still had with her was Holly. Holly was one of the lucky ones. According to the New York Times, the Hong Kong Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals had recorded 66 cases of the suspected dog poisoning, 14 of which have died. This was calculated in 2003. However, according to Wikipedia, there were 72 cases and 22 deaths up until the end of October 2009. Considering that these poisonings began in the late 1980s, there is a suspected case number of 200 domestic and wild animal killings from the poisoner.
What the heck?
Who kills dogs?
What kind of monster would do that?
Right. So this has been going on for 30 years, you guys.
So somebody has consistently been out to kill dogs for 30 years in Hong Kong, and they don't know who did it? Doesn't Hong Kong have like a ton of cameras everywhere?
Yeah, but so this road is actually it's a very long road. And it's one of those things where there's so much greenery around it. It would be really hard to like put a camera to catch every corner because the road kind of winds around a mountain. So there are a lot of curves, and I just don't think, even if the CCTV picked it up, I don't think they would be able to get everyone that passed by. One very prominent victim was a Norfolk Terrier named Whiskey. His owner was the last colonial governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten. Patton's wife, Lavender, had taken Whiskey out to Bowen Road for a walk. She said in the space of a few seconds, Whiskey had found something and quickly swallowed. He then began to act strangely. Lavender had heard of poisonings happening on Bowen Road and immediately reacted. She rushed him to the vet and he was saved. However, this made big news and more people started hearing about the poisonings and reporting their own cases. So Hong Kong used to be a British colony, and Chris Patten was the last governor. The turnover happened in 1997, and Chris Patten and his family moved, I think, to Hong Kong in 1995. So this was a really big deal, the fact that his dog was poisoned in Hong Kong. It raised a lot of questions. And I think the South China Morning Post said that they had 9 more stories that week of dog poisonings after they reported Chris Patten's dog had gotten poisoned. According to the Wall Street Journal, police believe a single male is responsible for the attacks, but haven't made much progress in solving the case. The police sent out more patrols after Whiskey's close call. 3 years later, after more cases of death, a Swedish pet detective was brought in. Hotline numbers were set up. A $6,400 reward was offered, which is a little over $800 US. They sent out plainclothes cops to stake out the area, but the killer has been able to avoid it all. So, the pet detective is Helena Strewing, a Swedish animal rights law specialist and an advisor to the Swedish police. Strewing, dubbed naturally the pet detective by newspapers, was tasked with building a profile of the poisoner using methods employed to track human serial killers. Strewing believes the killer is a loner-type person with a severe grudge against people. She goes on to say that she believes he's trying to hurt people by what they love most, which is their pets. There is one veterinarian, Australian Lloyd Kenda, head of Happy Valley Veterinarian Center in Happy Valley, who has seen over 50 cases from the dog poisoner. Kenda's clinic is one of the closest to the eastern end of Bowen Road Fitness Trail. In an interview with the South China Morning Post, he says the MO is always the same. The dog comes in having eaten some sort of meat from Bowen Road. The animal begins to vomit and has violent diarrhea, and the contents of this are always covered in blood and some odd-looking substance. There are pictures online if you want to see. A few years ago, independently commissioned chemists identified the insecticide endosulfan in some cases, herbicide paraquat or rodenticide warfarin in others, as well as a cocktail of other chemicals. Some tests were inconclusive. Soon, the chemists settled on a powerful pesticide, notably organophosphates, and an odorless neurotoxin insecticide called carbofuran. It's banned in Europe, Canada, Japan, and the United States. Employed in agriculture and then easily available in Hong Kong under multiple brand names, carbofuran is often rendered as pink or purple granules. A single ingested granule will kill a bird and can be fatal to children. The only person who has come close to identifying the killer was a criminal lawyer named Jonathan Midgley. One morning 15 years ago, Midgley was walking his two dogs when he passed a Chinese man with an extraordinary round face. So those were his words. In an interview I watched with him, he said the man started feeding the dogs out of nowhere. I'm assuming his dogs weren't on a lead, otherwise he probably would have stopped him from feeding his dogs, right? He said he was tossing meat from a little pink bag. Midgley asked the man who he was and what he was doing. The man said he loved animals and loved taking walks in the area. He shortly said, "I've got to go now," and he walked out of sight. Midgley said he had an odd feeling about the man. He seemed off and might have possibly had some mental problems. Minutes later, Mr. Midgley's chow mongrel, Ruth, started shaking and vomiting from ingesting the poisoned bait. The lawyer rushed Ruth to a veterinary clinic, and she survived. But to this day, Mr. Midgley still regrets not being able to catch the man. Recently, there have been a few copycats of the dog killer, or the man might have just moved locations. I don't know. At least six dogs were poisoned in the fall of 2011 on Llama Island, another of the outlying islands that make up Hong Kong. Llama is known for having a large expat community, and with a large expat community, you also get a large dog community. The most recent poisoning on Llama Island was in January of 2018. In July of this year, 2020, 3 dogs died in a suspected poisoning in Pok Fu Lam. To this day, the dog poisoner has not been found. If you have any information, you can contact the Task Force Subunit in Happy Valley at 6101-0100. Or, believe your dog has been poisoned, take your dog to the nearest veterinarian immediately, or the HKSPCA has a 24-hour hotline at 271-1100. And obviously, those are for Hong Kongers with the area code plus 852. But yeah, this guy has not been caught. It has been 30 years now, and they're seeing a copycat, maybe a copycat or him pop up again. So that is the dog poisoner of Bowen Road.
What a monster.
Terrible.
That is crazy.
So he's killed, like, I think it was, I don't remember. I think the final number was 22. He's killed 22 dogs. That's, I mean, if those were people, the police would be all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
He wouldn't be allowed to keep going.
God, what a sick human being.
No.
Well, thank you for that, Olivia. That was terrifying and horrible, but good to know
yes.
about. Yeah. Georgia, what have you got for us today?
All right. Well, I'm glad that we went with that one first because that one was so sad. But I have, I think, a good mystery for you guys today. And it is the mystery of where is Jimmy Hoffa? Is that ringing any bells?
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa sounds so familiar.
Yeah. So
No clue who that is.
we're going to get into him, who he is as a person, but he a lot of movies have been made about him because of his involvement with the mob and the mafia and the relation to President Richard Nixon at the time and all sorts of really weird things. So we'll just jump right into it. But so to answer the question, where is Jimmy Hoffa, we have to talk about who Jimmy Hoffa is. So he was a union activist leader for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. And the Teamsters is a labor union that advocates for better working conditions for their group, primarily freight drivers and warehouse workers. So I think the most famous organization associated with the Teamsters is UPS. So they're obviously a freight drivers, and so they're still part of the Teamsters. So Hoffa's career began in the early 30s with the Teamsters, and he did this by organizing a strike with dock workers. And through the years, he rose through the ranks and eventually became the president of the Teamsters from 57 to 71. So a little bit of background information on Hoffa. He was born on February 14th, 1913, to a coal miner father who died when he was 7 and an Irish mother. After his father died, his family moved to Detroit in 1924 for better opportunities. And when he was 14, he left school to be a stock boy and a warehouseman. And that's where he got into unions and started to begin organizing, basically. And so he got in with the Teamsters through that. Hoffa married Josephine Poziewak, an 18-year-old laundry worker, and they met during a non-unionized laundry workers strike action. To me, that kind of sounds romantic, like meeting the unionizer.
Is that your idea of romance? Is meeting somebody at a union meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. They had 2 children, Barbara Ann Crancer and James P. Hoffa.
Barbara Ann. Did that run through your head when you heard her name?
Oh, it only ran through your head, but now that you've sung it, it's going through my head.
Okay.
So this is a quote from Britannica.com. Hoffa was known throughout the trucking industry as a tough and knowledgeable bargainer. Hoffa successfully centralized administration and bargaining in the International Office of the Union. Hoffa also played a key role in the creation of the first national freight hauling agreement. This was during the time in America where the mob was getting really, there were already mob families all over America, but in Detroit, this was really up and coming. There was a lot of control by certain families in Detroit. And this was also right after the Depression. So organized crime was basically how things were being run. So it's said that when bankers and the government were closing in on land and people were foreclosing on property, mobsters became heroes because they were seen as community leaders who were helping the little people who were being taken advantage of by the government. So in the late 30s, when there was a turf war between the Teamsters and other smaller unions, the Teamsters got in bed with the mob because the mob was seen as a group that would take care of problems. And the mob didn't care who they were working for as long as there was a payday. So frequently what would happen was the mob would play both sides of the fence. But Jimmy Hoffa was able to secure a deal with the mob that they would basically be their muscle for them.
Nice.
So, yeah. So a fun fact, which isn't a fun fact, the mob and Hoffa could be seen as kind of the starters or a major player in the heroin epidemic in America and starting it because the heroin would come over from Sicily, where mob families would originate. The heroin would come over from Sicily and then would be trucked all through America through the Teamsters trucking efforts.
What?
So, yeah. So there was a lot of this, like, what we're going to do is benefit each other.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
All right.
So I chose this mystery because I really love anything that has to do with like the mob and gangsters. I think it's really interesting. I think there's like a lot of loyalty that goes into it. And when this came up, I was like, yes, this is the one.
And it's still going on today. Like the mob is still a very big entity in the world right now.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, you could make the argument that almost any organized crime, any of those like crime syndicates, is a mob, is like the mafia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
So the mob was benefiting. So after the mob helped out the Teamsters by getting rid of the smaller unions, they were basically in bed with each other at that point. So they were having to, you know, the Teamsters was having to lend themselves to the mob because they owed them. So basically what was happening at that point, the union would set up pensions for the union for sorry. The union would set up pensions for the union members. And that would essentially their retirement. So what would happen was the mob would borrow from the pensions and take that money to Las Vegas and use it in the casinos.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So the Teamsters were able to benefit greatly from the winnings of these loans. And through the 40s and 50s, the mob and Hoffa had a great relationship. And essentially I don't know if that was part of the reason he became president of the Teamsters, because it's a voting organization, so they vote their president in. But I would say that it probably did help him rise to the top. But this relationship between the mob and Hoffa got Hoffa on the radar of some very high profile politicians and well-known people, and even attorney general. So when President Kennedy became president, he appointed his brother, Robert Kennedy, who was an attorney, to be the attorney general. And so when he became attorney general, he created the Get Hoffa Squad, full of prosecutors and investigators, to get Hoffa on some sort of charges. And they tried multiple times, and you can watch their exchange on YouTube, like during a deposition or during a hearing. It gets pretty heated. They hated each other. Robert Kennedy and Jimmy Hoffa, they very, very bad blood. So things were going great between Hoffa and the mob, and then Hoffa was sentenced to jail for 13 charges. Things were going great between the mob and Hoffa, but then Hoffa was sentenced to jail for 13 years for unrelated charges, and the relationship between the mob and Hoffa began to crumble. In 1967, Hoffa entered federal prison on charges of jury tampering, fraud, and conspiracy. And when he was convicted, he refused to resign as president. So a man named Frank Fitzsimmons, who was an active member of the mafia, was named acting president of the Teamsters, and Hoffa had planned to run the organization through Fitzsimmons while in prison. And at the time, Fitzsimmons was apparently a Hoffa loyalist, but as time went on and he was president and things were going his way, he got that power, he lost that loyalty.
Well, then.
Yeah. So less than 5 years into his prison sentence, in 1971, President Richard Nixon pardoned Hoffa with the understanding and promise from Hoffa that he would stay away from union leadership until 1980. So basically,
Dirty
he had a
dick.
small probation. Yeah. So he had a
Nixon.
small, right? Oh, it gets worse. So he had a small probation from his work, and then he could go back. But Hoffa thought that this was government overstepping. He tried to invalidate the restrictions because he wanted to get back to being president, and he said he never agreed to those conditions. They tried a lawsuit. It didn't work. But don't feel too bad for him, because of his work with the pensioners, he was given his retirement early, which came out to $1.75 million.
Oh, cool. Yeah, not a lot.
Oh my gosh! So that's a lot. That was a lot of money back then. That was a lot of money back then.
So he easily could have just faded into the background and gone on with his life. Remember, he had 2 children. He could have just continued on, but he didn't.
He's not that guy. Come on.
He's not. So this is where things get weird. So after that pardon in 1971, in 1972, there's a presidential presidential election. And Republican Richard Nixon is running his re-election campaign against Democrat U.S. Senator George McGovern. And after Hoffa's pardon from Nixon, the Teamsters publicly endorsed Republican candidate Richard Nixon, even though they traditionally would support the Democratic candidate. So it was kind of like a quid pro quo. And there are tapes between President Richard Nixon and Teamsters leader Fitzsimmons where they were talking about how Fitzsimmons wanted Hoffa out of jail because he needed the support of those who were still Hoffa loyalists, but he didn't want him to be able to control the Teamsters. So it's theorized that he worked with Nixon to create this probation clause to get him out of jail. And that way, Nixon would receive the endorsement from the Teamsters and everyone that would align themselves with blue-collar workers.
Do you think that anybody ever went, and any point in their life went, oh, Nixon, he was a great president?
Yes, I do.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the role that Hoffa played in the government doesn't end with Nixon. There's speculation that he was arranging for a later called off assassination of Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and that he played a role in organizing the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas. So there's a lot up in the air.
Whoa, wait. I'm sorry.
Did you say JFK?
So when JFK was killed, he had come down really strong on organized crime, and the mob, of course, did not like that. So while I don't know if there's any actual proof or evidence that Hoffa was involved, there are theories that he could have been part of the organization of getting Lee Harvey Oswald with the gun in place to assassinate President Kennedy.
What? This goes deep. This goes so deep.
Yeah, that's layers
Yeah.
because JFK is a whole nother thing in itself with the magic bullet and Lee Harvey Oswald, and was it just him? And so to just like, that's just a lot of layers going on, and that shows how deep he is. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Wow.
So now we're going to talk about what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. We kind of had this background story. You have this idea of what he is. Okay, so before his disappearance, Hoffa was very publicly trying to gain control of the Teamsters and trying to get control at a local level to rise to the top again. And because he had this support by the union members and because it was a voting organization, the current leaders of the Teamsters was confident that he would be able to get that presidency again. But through the presidency of Fitzsimmons, who remember was very mafia oriented, he had allowed the mafia to really get itself into the Teamsters. So the mob knew that had Hoffa taken over again, he would have been trying to push the mafia out. Anyway, so on the day of his disappearance, July 30th, 1975, according to the note that he left for his family, 62-year-old Jimmy Hoffa went to a restaurant called the Macus Red Fox at 2 p.m. in Detroit to meet two acquaintances. The acquaintances were Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone and Anthony Tony Provenanzo. They were both members of the mafia, and they both had a history with Hoffa. So Provenanzo was a very influential member of the mafia, and because Hoffa was trying to rise through the ranks again to become the Teamsters president, they think that this meeting was set up as for those two men to bury the hatchet because they had really bad blood. They had been in jail together when Jimmy was in jail. However, both of the men never showed, and when questioned by the FBI, they said that the meeting had never been set. Giacalone was seen at the Southfield Athletic Club chatting up people he didn't know, almost like he wanted to be remembered there. He was going to people saying, "Do you have the time? Do you have the time? Do you have the time?" Like he was doing something over and over again to make himself an alibi. And what's interesting is when you think about mobsters at this time in history, these were men that were easily memorable. When they would walk into a room, everyone knew who they were. It was an immediate recognition. the idea that they would even need an alibi, that they were doing this so intentionally, leads to something nefarious. And the other gentleman that was supposed to be there, Provenanzo, was apparently in Jersey playing cards in a union hall. And keep in mind, this happened in Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
So clearly,
This sounds there's a rabbit hole in here.
Yeah.
And we've gotten lost in it.
Yeah.
We're in it. After they didn't show, Hoffa walked across the street and called his wife Josephine, letting her know, hey, these gentlemen never showed up. This is about 2:30ish. Witnesses say that they saw a burgundy Mercury Marquis with 3 men inside. They approached Hoffa. Hoffa walked over to the car and got into this car willingly. And the car drove off, and Hoffa was never seen again.
What?
Oh yeah, they totally murdered him. I mean,
100%.
yeah,
I was gonna say he's in Cuba.
You never know.
that is a good point.
But yeah, so one of the most famous men in Detroit, and in one of the biggest players in organized unions, just disappears. So let's talk about this car a little bit and what witnesses say happened. So witnesses say that the driver looked a lot like a man named Charles Chucky O'Brien, who was a constant companion to Hoffa. Chucky, who we'll talk about later, was kind of like a surrogate son to Hoffa. Hoffa did have his son, James P. Hoffa, but then Chucky was brought into Hoffa's life when he was young, and apparently his mother, so his father left when he was really young, but his mother apparently had a romantic relationship with many of the mobsters, and so she was
She was a favorite.
That's a great way to put it, Liv. Yeah. So that's why Hoffa took Chucky in. Anyway, we'll talk more about him later. So the car was one of Giacoloni's son's car, and when questioned by the FBI, Chucky said that he had borrowed it earlier that day to deliver fish. Hoffa had definitely been in the car because they found his hair inside the car, and also German shepherds picked up Hoffa's scent inside the backseat of the car and also in the boot of the car. So he was definitely in it. Police have also said that he could have been in it at a different time, and this was just the time that they found stuff in there that related to him. And so definitely that car picked him up. They just don't know who was actually driving. People say that it was Chucky, but Chucky has always maintained his innocence and said he had nothing to do with it. Hoffa's Pontiac was later found in the Macus Red Fox parking lot the next day, and he's disappeared.
Wow.
So Chucky later said that Hoffa never got in that car, but even though at one point Chucky and Hoffa had a really great relationship, over the years there had become some really bad blood between the two. Chucky felt like Hoffa didn't get him good enough positions within the Teamsters because he was kind of like a not a sidekick, but like a number 2 to Hoffa, but he wasn't given like leadership positions within the organization. So, and at the time of Hoffa's death, apparently they weren't even on speaking terms. FBI questioned the FBI questioned Chucky multiple times about Hoffa's death. In 2006, Chucky did an interview with the Associated Press and said he had nothing to do with Hoffa's disappearance and didn't think that the mystery of his death would ever be solved. He viewed Hoffa as a father figure. Chucky did die earlier this year, I think in February, at the age of 86. So that mystery's kind of gone with him.
So no deathbed confession.
No deathbed confession. And experts think that the mafia wouldn't trust Chucky with this large of a task and then leave him alive afterwards. So that's why I didn't really put him in the theories.
I feel like if somebody is like your father and you just say, I had nothing to do with it and this case will probably just never be solved. I feel like families who have missing family members are always like, they could be out there. You never know. I just need to hear that they're not anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think though with the mob, there's so much. If somebody's gone, they're gone, and it's because the mob took care of it.
And they could do it
You know
cleanly and quietly, and you would never know.
exactly. So it's widely acknowledged by everyone. Everyone knows that Hoffa was killed by the mafia. The police just can't pin it on anyone. They don't know who. So the Hoffex memo was a document written in 1976. It theorized that Hoffa was killed by the mafia because they thought Hoffa would out them as being involved with the Teamsters. Keep in mind, the Teamsters is a union. It's not supposed to be organized crime. It's supposed to look out for the little people, for the union workers. So the Hoffex memo theorized that to fix this, so he wouldn't out them, they just killed him. There's also potential that Hoffa knew about the mob and Nixon's agreement about other nefarious dealings, including Watergate and payouts to other people, and the mob just wanted to keep him quiet. They thought Hoppa, no, not Hoppa. They thought that Hoffa would swap the intel for an agreement so he could get back to union work and have the 1980 ban lifted by providing them intel. So apparently, after allowing the mob into the Teamsters, he had become very vocal about getting them out of the union and getting them out of their pensions.
Can I just say my joke?
So let's
now?
talk about the theories. Yeah, girl.
Please.
Yeah, you said Hoppa, and I said Hoppa sounds more like Papa, but my mic wasn't on.
What? I was like Papa.
It was like the Papa of the
love it.
mob or whatever.
Get it?
All right. So theory one is that after Chucky and the two other unidentified men, picked up Hoffa at the request of Frank Fitzsimmons, the union leader, Hoffa was killed at Roland McMaster's horse farm. Roland McMaster's was an enforcer for the Teamsters. In 2006, the FBI raided his farm trying to find Hoffa's body, but they didn't find anything. It was theorized that his body was put in a 55-gallon drum and it was sent to a mafia-controlled landfill. But that's kind of been discredited because the people say, like, why would the mafia keep Hoffa's body around? They're looking for it. People are actively looking for it. Why just keep it around?
I think if you put someone in a drum, you always put a little bit of something else in there to just like deteriorate the body and everything.
True that.
So maybe they're just vats of like melted people.
Maybe. You never know. So theory 2 is that Provenanzo, his old enemy that he was supposed to meet, ordered the hit on Hoffa. According to Provenanzo's son, the two hated each other, and their hatred, they began as friends, but then through the years and when they were spending a lot of time in jail together, that's when things really became cutthroat and they became enemies. But this theory doesn't really go anywhere, and it, honestly, in my opinion, it has as much validity as the rest of the theories. So theory 3 is that Richard Kalinsky, aka the Iceman, killed Hoffa.
Oh.
He was a hitman and a serial killer.
The Iceman.
I'm sorry. I was just thinking of that old ass name.
Right? The Iceman's coming for ya. The Iceman was apparently paid $40,000 to kill Hoffa. He went, picked up Hoffa with the other mafia members, drugged him, stabbed him in the head, and then drove his body to Jersey. They then had the car crushed and sold as scrap metal. According to the Iceman, his body is part of a crushed car in Japan by now.
That is insane, and what a way to go with a knife to the head.
What a visual.
Right?
The mafia only
this is what
$3,000. They've been looking for this guy for how long?
So this was a confession. So Richard Kalinsky confessed to this.
Oh.
But apparently the Iceman was also a great exaggerator and he lied all the time. So
he's trying to beef up his CV.
Yeah.
Only 10,000.
He's trying to get more clients.
Hey.
So theory number 4, the mob boss Buffalino that's his last name.
We're getting better as we go.
I know. I think his first name was Bill Buffalino.
That's even better.
Are you talking about Buffalo Bill?
None? Not Buffalo Bill. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember. I didn't write down his first name for some reason. Anyway, the mob
Let's call him
boss,
BB.
Buffalino, BB, yeah, BB, called the hit on Hoffa. Frank Sheeran, the Irishman, is his nickname, killed Hoffa, is theory number 4. Apparently, Sheeran was originally hired by Hoffa during his reign, and they became close friends, but he was contracted by the mafia to kill Hoffa, and he had to, otherwise the mafia would kill him. So accomplices drove Hoffa to an empty house. Sheeran shot him in the back of the head and left. This is what Sheeran said. And his body was taken to a mob-controlled funeral home and cremated. And there is no evidence of this. There's no evidence of anything, to be clear, but there's no evidence of this. And experts seem to think that this isn't probable, because why would the mafia hire somebody outside of the mafia to kill Hoffa when there were plenty of people within the mafia that would have done it?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, you have to think about it, like, when it comes to the mafia, yeah, they're all like, it's family and stuff like that, and take it to the mattress, and all that godfathery stuff, isn't it? That's stereotypical, but whatever. Anyway, when it comes to the mafia, though,
That's not real. That's not real, Ariel. It's just
you know what? When
Hollywood.
Tom Hanks said it in You Got Mail, I felt it. So
She didn't even. She's not even referencing the actual Godfather. She's referencing a movie that references the Godfather.
yeah, duh. That's the way it goes. I'm a reference. It's like Inception in here. No, I think maybe if you did hire someone outside of it, because they do, as a mafia, like, they do talk about things too. It's just like well known. So I feel like if somebody was hired within the mafia and wanted to do it, everyone else would know who did it. So if they could find a rat, then they were gonna key it. Like, if the police could find a rat, they were gonna key in on that rat, because $10 says that rat knows exactly who killed Hoffa.
That's a good point, Ariel. Talking about movies, there's a movie on Netflix called The Irishman, and it's based off of Frank Sheeran, and he's played by Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino plays Jimmy Hoffa. And I haven't watched the movie.
Oh, I didn't realize that was with Jimmy Hoffa.
And Bill Buffalino is in it.
Didn't Al Pacino also play Hoffa in Hoffa?
I didn't look that far. I didn't realize that movie was a thing.
You keep going, but I'm going to Google it real quick.
All right. Sounds good. And in the movie, apparently the first thing that Hoffa ever said to Sheeran was over a phone call. And it's in the movie. It's also based on a book, and Martin Scorsese purchased the rights to this book and made this movie. But the first thing apparently he said was, "I hear you paint houses," which apparently in the biz is code for "I hear you kill people."
So, just to reference back, actually, there is a movie about Jimmy Hoffa called Hoffa, and it turns out that it was actually Jack Nicholson who played Jimmy Hoffa in that one. So you've got some really big names covering these roles.
Yeah, I could see that. Jack Nicholson would play a good Hoffa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in The Irishman, the way that movie ends, Hoffa's picked up by...
Oh, you're going to do
Wait
it.
a minute. Well, Georgia, earlier when you said, I'm so into my mystery, I watched a documentary on it. Are you talking about The Irishman?
No, I'm not. No, I watched this thing on YouTube.
I can't believe you spent 4 hours watching a film.
No. I watched this thing on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, because that movie is long.
No. But I'm going to watch it because I think this stuff is really interesting. I mean, I guess I kind of know how it ends now, but whatever. That's fine.
Ruin it for all of us.
In the movie. I know. I should have said spoiler alert at the beginning of this. In The Irishman, they theorize that he was picked up, and keep in mind, it's based off of the book based on Sheeran's life. Sheeran Chucky and another Teamster that I haven't even brought up because there's too many theories and too many people, picked him up and he was taken to a nearby house to be executed. So that's the way that Sheeran said that it ended. There's no evidence, but then again, there is no evidence at all. Theory number 5, which in my mind is what actually happened, was that in another mob-led hit, the mob chose the 3 most secretive people that they had, went to go pick up Hoffa. They took him to a house 2 miles away from the Marcus Red Fox, to a house that he was familiar with that was owned by an acquaintance. He was killed there, taken to a sanitation place. There he was incinerated, and it was all over in a matter of hours, and it was easily cleaned up. They had a plan in place. And then a few years after that, the sanitation place actually burnt to the ground. So
the common theme in all of these theories is that he died.
yeah. So he's dead. People are confident of course, there are the people that are like, no, he's hanging out in Cuba or, wherever.
I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah. Liv, where do you think he is?
My theory is, I think he knew he was in trouble, right? Like, he had gotten himself so deep. I think he knew he had to get out soon. I think he had a friend that was like, I'll come pick you up. Let's get you out of here before anything happens. He got a ticket and he got on an airplane and he was wearing really big sunglasses and he stole a bunch of money from the plane.
And he is DB Cooper.
And he is DB Cooper.
Amazing. See what you did there.
I'm referencing, for those of you who are just listening to this episode, I'm referencing a couple episodes we did where Lisa did her DB Cooper mystery.
Be in every single episode when we talk about theories, because you never know who he's going to be, except we know he's Ted Cruz.
Yes.
He's actually Loki. Let's be real.
And the Zodiac Killer.
Notice how Loki is actually real, and it's proven.
So there was even theories that Hoffa had been shot and driven to New York, where he was buried under the Giant Stadium. And so they actually tore up the Giant Stadium looking for Hoffa's body. Mythbusters did an episode there using, I don't know what it's called, but there's like this machine that can look down into the ground and you can like see irregularities. And so you can see if there's something buried there. And his body was never found there.
I love Mythbusters.
I know, right? But so that theory has been disproven. But apparently there have been 14 people that claim to kill Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, okay, we get it. You want to take the claim for it, but like, guys, what happened if he literally it was a freak accident and they were like, shit, someone's got to take the rap.
And they're just like the mob.
Yeah, it's like one of those
who knows?
Final Destination things, and he cracked his neck on the bathroom sink or something.
We gotta make it so cool, though.
Yeah, he's a mob boss. Or he's kind of, no. So with his death, secrets died with him. Before his disappearance, he was supposed to testify at a hearing about President Kennedy's assassination. Secrets such as the U.S.'s role in the assassination attempt against Fidel Castro and secret dealings of the CIA potentially died with him. I also left out so much stuff because there was just so much. We would have been here for hours. So I left out things such as...
I mean, clearly the government did it. We know who did it now.
Yeah. Left out the Bonaro Wars, all sorts of car bombings, business bombings, just general violence between team members or like the team members of the Teamsters, lots of different things. It was a very dangerous time in Detroit back then. In the documentary I watched on Amazon, I forgot to say, I got all this information from the documentary from Amazon, Wikipedia, a Britannica article, all sorts of stuff. So in the Amazon Prime video I watched, this quote was in there. It said, Jimmy Hoffa had outlived his usefulness and he knew too much, so it was easier to kill him. He had played a very complex game for a long time and he had overplayed his hand. If it wasn't for Jimmy Hoffa and others like him to fight on the behalf of the workers, there wouldn't be this huge middle class that girded the country during the so-called golden age of the 50s and 60s. He had to get his hands dirty to do it, and he loved the power and perks that came with it. But so do politicians like the Kennedys, and so do the captains of industries that he battled. He didn't go to an Ivy League college, and he didn't have connections, but he became one of the most powerful men in the country. He's one of the most loved and one of the most hated. They don't make men like Jimmy Hoffa anymore, at least not in America.
That,
So,
whoa.
I know, right? What a good quote. So Hoffa was legally declared dead in 1982. His daughter, Barbara Ann Crancer, became a lawyer and a judge in St. Louis County, and his son, James P. Hoffa, became the president of the Teamsters on May 1st, 1999. They do like a memorial thing for Daddy Hoffa every once in a while. Yeah. So that is the mystery of where is Jimmy Hoffa.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, Jimmy Hoffa. Well, thanks so much for that, Georgia. We really appreciate that. It's also good to know, all that mafia business. I think we should now turn it to our missing person. So, Lisa, I hear you have the missing person for today.
Okay. This case was a hard one. It's Amber Ayaz and her teen daughter went missing last November and were last seen on November 22nd, 2019, at their apartment in Irving. At the time, there were not a lot of leads to report, but now that the case has been reopened, police believe the disappearance was an abduction. The day that the two went missing, Ayaz's husband claims that a man and a woman of Chinese descent, he believes, came to the door and knocked, and that the husband became unconscious due to an unknown substance. When he came to, his wife and daughter were gone. So somehow, him going unconscious while that couple was there led to the disappearance. The husband did not know the couple, and the authorities are hoping someone at the apartment complex would recognize the couple. The mystery woman was around 5'8" and 180 pounds, and the man approximately 5'10" and 190 pounds. The two may have left in a black Cadillac of some unknown model. Ayaz, 35 years old, is 5'9", 180 pounds, and was last seen wearing a black shirt, black vest, fitted black pants, and with white writing on them, and colorful shoes. Fu, only 13 years old, was wearing a black tracksuit. She's 5'11" and weighs around 200 pounds. The FBI joined the investigation and is offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to the missing mother and daughter. If anyone has any information, they can call the Los Angeles FBI field office at 310-477-6565.
Sounds good. It was good seeing you guys. It's been so long.
I was so glad to get back together. Pretty Lady Mom. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.